The 23rd of October 1942, Ironbottom Sound lies ahead, low cumulus, torn thin sun glitter skipping over chopped water. Kaito trims a breath of nose-up breath steady on a 4 count. Inside the zero, the supercharger sings a clean thread. Control cables hum like wire under tension. Fuel is not gallons, but minutes, a ring of time tightening around the fight. Ailerons feel like bird bones beneath his gloves. A touch brings the horizon true. Hot oil creeps through the canopy seal. 2 fighters step out of haze, box-nosed, blunt-jawed, climbing shallow toward cloud. They look slow until the needle says otherwise. Closure walks forward. Angle opens like a door. Doctrine is a calm voice in his head. Power stays on. Slice the circle. Take the angle before they know it's gone. He tightens the turn. The zero rides its own silk. Power on the enemy leader softens barely and the air turns viscous. The prop disc blooms. The box nose swells in his sight and with a quiet insult drops under his nose. For a heartbeat, Kaito has the picture. Lift is clean but closure leaps. The perfect line shoves him into the forward slot of his own trap. He feels the buffet tickle the wingtips. The oath he carries: never give up angles, never ease presses like a blade against his ribs. Sound changes before thought. The cockpit's wire song frays under pressure. Outside the radial bark of the Grumman is a low, blunt cough. He feathers pressure on the stick to keep the tremor small, adds a sliver of bank to reshape the merge. On the radio, English threads through ion hiss, too calm by half. Ease it, let him float. The leader power, still dulled, drifts forward, surrendering the sight picture. The wingman holds hot guns, patient horizon steady. Kaito's heartbeat counts the math he lives by minutes of fuel, seconds of trigger, inches of lead. He can snatch back pride with throttle and pull, or he can steal time with speed slow to make the other man fast. A bead of sweat crawls along his temple. He feels the zero's lightness beg for the circle. He does not give it. The stick comes a finger light, the throttle a hair back, and the world slides. In that quiet shift, the lesson speaks without words. Elegance chases. Utility arranges. Perfection wants the duel. Utility wants the kill. Heat soaks the strip and lifts the smell of hot aluminum and sweet fuel. Kaito stands under the zero's wing, while crewmen wipe the skin with rags as if handling lacquerware. Rivet lines run straight as arrows. Panel gaps stay whisper-thin. Beauty that demands guardians. He keeps his gloves on less for grease than to hide the way his fingers tighten without permission. Suda watches the horizon where the blunt-jawed shapes have been arriving in waves. He clicks his tongue. Boxy Grummans, he says, letting contempt ride the syllables. Crates with engines. Ugly as tool sheds. He pretends to study a seam and adds softer. A rough board flies once. A crafted blade flies forever. The words comfort because they rhyme with habit. Kaito feels the comfort pass through like warm tea and notices the price inside it. 2 crewmen fare a seam with patience that could mend porcelain. Another lines every screw slot to the same compass point. A 4th coaxes a cowl latch that prefers hands to tools. Minutes stack invisibly on an altar that accepts only minutes. Across the lagoon, the parts hut treats spares like heirlooms. A crate of swages signed out with ceremony. A short list of who may touch control cables. A pencil chained to a ledger. When something bends, the question lands as how careful, not how fast. The airplane is a shrine to lightness and craft. A shrine eats time. Over water, a new rhythm arrives and steps onto the field. The blunt bark of radial engines drops in like boots on a boardwalk, a square, insistent cadence that presses into the breastbone. Kaito notices his thumb gouging a groove into the edge of a chalk stick. When he relaxes, dust ghosts his glove. Suda keeps talking as if speech could hold off arithmetic. They accept dents. They bolt on ugly plates. Fasteners proud like bad teeth. They swap what breaks, not fix it. Peasant's carpentry. He almost smiles. Ugly expects to be hit. So ugly keeps flying. The thought refuses to leave. In briefing, the chalkboard turns arcs into times and times into fuel. The numbers are familiar. The constants are not. Inspection here is hours you count with trusted eyes and careful hands. Turnaround is a procession of specialists. If nothing is bent, the minutes shrink. If a latch complains, the minutes multiply. Rumor says the enemy's carts bring bins, not ledgers. A gun jams, they trade the whole tray. A cowl buckles, they hang a new one without apology. 30 minutes if the damage is kind, 90 if it is rude, and the airplane staggers back into line with tape scabs and pencil notes. Launch. The island shrinks. The Zero resumes its clean wire song, a purity that tightens the mind until only the circle exists. For a few minutes, doctrine feels like armor. Then the net cracks in clipped English vectors stacking like lumber. Altitude blocks fill. The merge unrolls and the trick repeats. The enemy leader eases power, the sky thickens, the nose presents, and the wingman holds a patient, fatal picture. The outside noise is a blunt cough that soars through the cockpit hymn. Kaito's palm dampens. A small tremor touches the web between thumb and forefinger. He eases pressure to keep it from becoming shake. Back on the ground, the lesson rolls in on tires. The boxy Grummans thump onto the strip with tape across seams and grease pencil notes on panels. Crew chiefs move like butchers on a Saturday rush, decisive, unceremonious, clean. A gun barrel out, a gun barrel in. A cowl panel off, a cowl panel on. No rags pitched like silk. No one worships finish. The airplane is a tool that takes a beating and returns to the bench. It is never handsome. It is almost always present. Kaito runs his palm along the Zero's skin and feels bones under silk ribs, spars thin skins that saved weight and bought grace. He has handled fragments of enemy metal, too thick, crude edges, a hinge that looks farm-made, a doubler plate that offends taste. He hates the piece for being honest. He hates himself for believing it. He tries to breathe doctrine back into the world. Precision saves fuel. Precision saves men. Precision wins. The words hold inside one duel. Outside the duel, time decides differently. The side that turns airplanes into pulses wins more minutes than it loses. He looks at the line and sees pulses, arrivals, refuels, swaps, departures, the rhythm of a shop, not a salon. Suda's voice dries out. Paint is for parades, he says, meaning to wound and landing short. The joke sounds like a confession. Beauty that cannot stand when called is a liability, not a virtue. Kaito presses his thumb against a tiny nick on the canopy rail and feels grit catch. The nick is not shame, it is a clock. Every nick he ignores returns as time saved. He closes his eyes and listens. The clean wire song is still there, thin and bright. Under it, the blunt work beat keeps time steady and indifferent. Two sounds that will not harmonize. He opens his hand and watches the fingers steady. The tremor is gone. In its place is pressure, the same pressure that made the air thick when the enemy eased power and turned closure into a weapon. It is not personal. It is a system shaping choices. Under a high white lid of cloud, the plan moves like drill. Two ship elements nose east altitude, split by a clean 100 meters. Kaito, high left, Nakamura, low right. The bracket opens, measured in seconds, and arcs. One draws the eye, the other slides for the cut. Throttle sits firm against the stop. Mixture, prop, and trim are where habit left them. The Zero feels as if breath alone could steer it. For a moment, joy returns, that bright click when geometry obeys hands. Contacts grow from specks to silhouettes. Box noses, thick wings. The enemy pair climbs shallow bait without pretense, letting distance close at a rate that flatters the hunter. Kaito gives a short pulse on the radio, the tone of a metronome, and pushes a sliver of nose down to keep energy honest. Nakamura eases out on the right knife edge to the sun, the perfect counter to any break into them. Textbook. Kaito tastes salt, where oil and sea share the air. He can already see the line where bullets will walk. The first merge is clean. Kaito cuts inside the lead fighter, the canopy filling with metal, the picture swelling toward the instant where the trigger becomes gravity. He squeezes a short burst, a disciplined stitch across the shoulder and root, and the enemy shivers. Paint dusts away in a grey breath. That flash of result lights the mind like sugar. The Zero rolls to cover the wingman's nose angles stacked just right. He keys the mic one word that is not quite a smile and feels the section knitting tight. It unknits in the space of a breath. The damaged fighter eases its throttle. Not a stall, not a panic, pull a patient, ugly deceleration that turns the air to syrup. Kaito's closure jumps. The target swells, then slips under his nose line, and the wingman he had caged is suddenly broadside with room to fill. A heavy cough from behind and left. Tracers skate through the sunwash like thrown beads. Kaito shoves stick and rudder to spoil the shot, and feels Buffet tap the wingtips, a reminder that perfection has boundaries. He saves the airframe and loses the picture. Nakamura calls tight and hard, breath clipping the words. He has eyes on a second pair angling in from high quarter, not late, but layered as if someone stacked the fight on purpose. Kaito sees them as pale shapes against cloud. The bracket that should have trapped one enemy now faces 4 each timed to arrive as the other leaves. The net is not a line, it is a weave. They try the play again because the play is good. Kaito drags a shallow climb to bait the bite. Nakamura floats crosswise to snare the turn. For 3 seconds the enemy obliges, then power fades, and the picture ruins itself. The lead enemy grows, then falls under the nose. The wingman keeps speed and line. A third shape, uninvited, fills the far edge of vision. Angles multiply against them. Kaito has the presence to admire the cruelty of it. He feels it in his hands before he names it tiny mischief at the base of the thumb where tendons meet grip. He releases pressure shakes once and resets the hold. Trim is a whisper out a hair of nose up left over from the climb. He rolls the wheel with his index finger until the stick comes light again. Such small errors bloom when the sky thickens. He forgives himself and returns to the hunt. Ammo counts as time. The belt feeds like a clock unwinding. Each burst is 2 seconds shaved from chance. Kaito had planned his fire as punctuation. Now he writes in fragments defensive syllables to break a pursuer's sentence. The seconds drain faster than any gauge. He thinks of them not as cartridges but as breaths. Each press of the trigger is an exhale he cannot get back. Another pair drops in altitude angle speed like a drawer sliding shut. There is no grand maneuver to admire, only the tyranny of sequencing. Every time he clears his nose, another shape owns the horizon he needs. He keeps his discipline, avoids the flat turn that would feed the myth of his own machine, and uses small dives to buy room. The enemy keeps stealing that room by making the air viscous throttle eased at the wrong moment for Kaito's hope, right moment for the trap. He reverses gently to deny the forward slot pulls just enough to keep the nose honest, and spies a window. An enemy overshoots a touch too far and floats wide. Kaito nails a quick squirt, a stitched line that clips metal at the wingtip. The joy of skill flares again, then dies as the window closes under the weight of a fresh arrival from above. The replacement is not better. It is simply in time. The radio grows crowded with short words. Vectors from the ground, calls from the section, the impersonal brevity of men doing sums in their heads. Kaito filters for the only numbers that matter: fuel in minutes, ammo in seconds, altitude in hundreds. The 3 numbers move in directions that lean toward the same end. A heavy shape appears in his high 12 dives and releases a short hammering burst that misses clean but smears the air with intention. Kaito sees the gloss of the enemy's cowl tape, the nicked paint near a gun port, the scrawl of a grease pencil across a panel. None of it slows the airplane. It looks like a tool, not a trophy, and refuses to break at the places pride expects. He slides low, uses the sea's glare to lose a set of eyes, and resets the bracket smaller, just him and Nakamura against one pair. It works for half a minute. They split the enemy, cross their lines, force a mistake. A beautiful timing problem lands solved until another pair arrives from the blind quadrant that the first solution created. It feels like cutting one rope on a net and finding 3 more wrapping the ankle. The body records what the mind resists. Kaito's breath shortens at the start of each merge, then stabilizes on the out. He keeps checking trim, fiddling a hair too much, paying a tax in attention he does not have. The glove creaks when he squeezes. He forces the hand to loosen by opening the fingers and rewrapping the grip as if he is learning to hold a tool again. He looks for a single duel to justify the creed, a space where elegance can trim away the blunt world. The sky denies it. Even when he wins one picture, a fresh nose arrives to snatch the winnings, and the clock on his belt keeps eating itself. He gives up a sliver of altitude to buy speed, then gives up a sliver of pride to buy time, easing power in a way he refuses to name. The aircraft answers kindly. The enemy drifts a hand's breadth forward. Nakamura takes a try and misses for lack of lead. They are fighting well and losing anyway. A moment of quiet appears, the kind that tastes like metal, and Kaito hears only engine and wind. He does not feel fear so much as pressure, a steady thumb on the sternum that asks for choices paid in seconds. He spends another burst to clear a tail, and watches the counter in his head fall below a comfort line. He marks a number he will not cross. The fight ignores his mark. When they break away to reclimb, the enemy is already climbing in layers, patient and close, as if the sky itself belongs to a schedule. Kaito touches the trim wheel again, finds it half a notch off, and eases it home. The aircraft steadies, his hands steady with it. The lesson that began as an insult is becoming a fact. Skill wins moments. Sequence wins minutes. Minutes decide who comes back around for another try. He checks fuel, does the math, and counts the belts left across both wings. The totals are honest, and honesty has its own chill. He calls Nakamura to shift west and reset with the sun at their backs. The answer comes clipped and calm. Behind them, engines thud on one after another, a line of sound drawn across the island like a ruler. The joy of the first cut lingers as taste sweet and useless. Ahead, the air waits with the same quiet patience it had before they arrived, ready to thicken on command. Cloud lays a hard ceiling over the western edge of the fight, light gone flat as sheet metal. Kaito holds a modest climb to rebuild options. Mixture-rich prop set trimmer whisper nose down, so the stick sits weightless in his right hand. Nakamura tucks low right a shadow that answers every tilt. Below the sea throws cold knives of glare. Ahead, the blunt noses are already arranging their puzzle, one in front, playing loose with power, one behind, waiting with the patience of a butcher. They take the shape again, Kaito, forward to bait the bite, Nakamura crossing to cut. For 3 seconds, the world is the one he trained for airspeed, honest altitude, in reserve the zero so light he can feel each rib under silk. The lead enemy swells in the glass. He knows the stitch of fire he wants, and where it will land on the shoulder, and root. His thumb eases toward the button. A heavy engine opens somewhere left high and behind a square beat that doesn't sing so much as shove. Tracers swing clean and fast across the tail. His pride thought was safe. The airframe quivers without complaint. His chest tightens into a shorter rhythm, and the mask tastes of rubber and salt. He kicks a breath into his ribs, taps rudder, flattens the bank, and the shot walks wide. For a blink, he has the picture back. The lead enemy does the thing that keeps insulting him. Power softens, not drama, not panic, just a deliberate easing that turns the sky thick. The target swells, then slides under his nose as if the air has turned to syrup. Closure jumps. His hand wants to haul. The oath rises like a commandment. Power stays on. Never surrender. Angles the circle saves you. Another cough of engine closer now. The rear enemy arrives online with a calm that makes Kaito's teeth hurt. Keep power and you become bait. Pull and you become a gift. Every answer he trusts places him exactly where they want him. Heat crawls up his neck. The glove on his throttle feels carved from wood. He eases it. Not a dive, not a flinch. A clean, measured crack just enough to thicken the air in front of his guns and hand the forward slot to the man certain he's earned it. The prop disc blurs wider. The nose comes a breath high. Wind around the canopy seal changes pitch. Shame arrives with the force of a hand on the sternum. The heart strikes hard against it. He counts 3 beats that feel too loud. The enemy he was about to carve drifts ahead, then slides down under the nose line in a move that used to belong only to other people. The pursuer's picture runs away from him as his own speed betrays him. Kaito rolls out with a wrist flick, no showy yank, just a flat, contemptuous reset, and the horizon opens where metal had been. A slip of bank, quiet rudder, and the angle breathes toward him. Use closure, not circle, he says into the net voice, ironed flat. Now. Nakamura's acknowledgement is a breath and a click. Kaito snaps a 2 count across the nearer target before it can recover its place. Metal chips, paint lifts in a grey puff. The fighter jolts like a door hit with a shoulder. He lets the guns go silent before greed can talk. Ammunition in this fight is measured in seconds, not rounds. Each press is an exhale you do not get back. Behind him, the hammering engine returns lower, now hunting without hurry. He refuses the flat turn that would honour his training more than his life. He throws the 0 into a shallow S that wastes nothing, and denies anyone knows a clean line. Each time his instincts reach for a pure circle, he answers with a fingertip of throttle and a tilt of wing that makes the air sticky under the other man's prop. The airplane approves. With trim settled, the stick comes back to a living weight instead of a burden. The shame stays. It stays, and he flies through it. The leader tries the trick again, easing power to turn the merge gelatinous. Kaito is already watching the wingman because that is where the scheme breathes. He keeps his own throttle just dull of eager and waits for the pursuer's speed to outrun judgment. The wingman floats a fraction ahead of hope. The picture hinges open. Nakamura slides into the hinge as if the sky meant it for him. A short rip of fire. Aileron fabric bites away from the enemy's wing and flutters like a torn prayer flag. The heavy fighter wobbles, but refuses to die from courtesy. Reset. They do, climbing through a patch of glare that makes paint into light and hides their intent. A fresh pair is already coming from the quarter they cannot pay for. The old answer, take the circle demand, the duel hangs on Kaito's tongue and dries there. He calls a heading that buys seconds rather than applause. He feels the telltale at the base of his thumb, a needle of tremor where tendon meets grip. He opens his fingers, rewraps carefully, sets the hand down like a tool he respects. Trim is half a whisper off. He rolls the wheel until the stick regains that fingertip buoyancy. He has stopped fighting the airplane. He is using the air. Another pass. He budgets a 1 count and takes it short enough to be discipline, long enough to be a message. The belt in his head clicks down. The number he promised himself not to cross comes into view and keeps walking toward him. He shoves pride aside with the heel of his hand and moves on. A blunt nose fills the right pane and glides long. He gifts it the slot he would have stolen a month ago and steals it back by taking speed away exactly when pride would have poured it on. The other pilot arrives where Kaito used to be a half-second early and finds clean sky and a waiting pair of guns off his left. Another stitched blink of fire. Another flinch of metal. Still no final answer. The lesson is not about victories. It is about not giving back what time sells you. Suda's voice tries to rise, edges and blades and purity, and Kaito lets the memory pass like kitchen noise from another house. His mind runs numbers, seconds of trigger, minutes of fuel, hundreds of meters that will cost him if he spends them wrong. Doctrine taught him speed of hand and clarity of line. Arithmetic is teaching him mercy for himself. They break low to the west, where the water seems near enough to thumb. In the canopy's reflection, he sees his eyes wider than a calm man's sweat beading along the brow pad. He tastes someone else's powder in the air. The net stays orderly because he keeps it orderly. Line 2. Same play. If he dulls float him, he says, "We are not here to be beautiful." The next merge feels different because his mind arrives before his pride. He eases power a breath earlier than the urge to pull and watches the overshoot bloom like a slow bloom of light. Nakamura reaches bites, a strip from the enemy's wing breaks clean. Not a kill. Enough. He knows what he traded. A rule he wore like skin is now a tool he can lay down or pick up. The silence that follows is not relief. It is the quiet after a door unlocks. His pulse still runs hard but holds a usable rhythm. He leaves the throttle where his new sense wants it neither hungry nor shy, and rides the pressure like a current he has finally decided to stop fighting. Ahead, the sky opens a hand's breadth. He takes it without drama. Behind engines hammer in a line that does not care what any one pilot believes. He keys the mic once more, the instruction, pure and simple, scraped free of vanity. Use closure, not circle. Dusk laid iron over the strip and left the palms in black cutouts. Engines clicked to silence. The wind shifted and brought the sweet, sharp mix of fuel and hot metal into the revetments. Kaito sat with his helmet cupped in both hands until the noise inside his head lowered to something he could breathe with. Then he stood and crossed to the bench, where the captured panel waited. It was dull blue under chalk scars and tape ghosts, an honest face that had met weather and tools without complaint. He set his palm on it and felt weight where his instincts expected. Grace, thick skin, unapologetic edges, a squarer hinge than taste would allow a doubler plate stamped rather than coaxed. Nothing was shaved for beauty. Everything was chosen to survive. Nakamura slid a lamp closer. Light found stamped numbers and grease pencil arrows. There was a blocky check beside a latch, the kind a hurried hand makes when a promise turns into routine. A gun tray lay beside the panel, a simple box with rails and a latch big enough for gloves. Kaito flipped it. The tray slid in and out with the lazy confidence of something used by tired people. The runners carried dirt and a bright scratch from a rushed reload, yet the motion stayed straight and sure. The part did not ask to be admired. It asked to go back to work. Suda arrived with the day's weight in his shoulders and leaned on a post. "Dragged off a hulk in the shallows," he said. "If we can't have the bird, we can at least see how the bones were pinned." He let his eyes travel the panel, then the tray. "Grumman," he added, and the old scorn sounded thin against the metal. Kaito lifted the panel's edge. The seam of his glove tugged under the load. Some rivet heads sat a little proud. A line wavered where his side would have paid a morning to make it drawstring straight. On a zero that wobble would be a sin to polish away. Here it was a decision. Right is what holds, not what pleases. He saw as plainly as a crooked frame in a workshop that the frame was never meant for a gallery. Craft lived here, but its aim was duty, not display. A chief from the next bay wandered in sleeves black to the elbow grin he forgot to put away. He tapped the stamp with a knuckle. "This fits more than one airframe," he said. "If the holes disagree, hands make them agree." "Fast," he shrugged when Suda asked about time. "Fuel and belts, if she's only scraped half an hour when the cart is quick. Dented cowl, sulking gun. A wheel that talks back, call it an hour and a bit. Swap bolt chalk, a note roll. Bins not ledgers." The words stayed. Kaito saw their own rags laid out like altar cloth, the neat book of signatures, the latch that preferred gentleness, and 8 minutes no one confessed. He remembered the merges, the way a blunt nose eased power and thickened the sky, the small movement of his own throttle that opened a picture he had thought closed. He measured that distance again in his head, and found it worth more than the pride it cost. He took the enemy barrel in both hands, and felt the promise of replacement in its blunt weight. Pull, set aside, seat a new one lock. No ceremony, no permission asked of the machine. The part was born temporary, and that honesty made the whole airplane faster to forgive. Nakamura watched, and said almost to himself that they planned to be hit. Kaito answered that they planned to be back. The lamp hissed and steadied. A pump coughed alive and smoothed into usefulness. Somewhere, a cart rattled past with a spare prop blade bolted to its flank like an oar. The sound did not threaten. It kept time. Suda touched the panel as a man tests a stove. "They accept waste," he said, keeping a promise to his younger self. Kaito studied the hinge that would not fail, where a gentleman might expect the plate hammered flat by someone who had no time for finesse. "They refuse to waste time," he said. That is the difference that kept arriving in the sky. He was not throwing away craft. He was moving it. Lightness belonged in flight, not in every seam. Beauty belonged where a hand must feel the airplane answer, not in screw slots lined to north. They had dressed their machine for inspection. The enemy dressed theirs for return. Silence shaped a small circle around the table. The chief pretended to inventory a box of mixed fasteners and failed to hide a smile. Kaito turned the tray and studied a peened pin, scarred by a hammer. He wanted to be offended and found relief instead. He thought of the tiny nick on his own canopy rail, the one he used to rub as if care could erase it, and understood the nick as a clock. Each time he walked past it, he saved a step for the version of himself who would need those seconds later. His hands relaxed on the bench. "We told ourselves the duel would decide," he said. "Today taught me the duel is disposable. What returns decides." The words were simple, because the truth was heavy. Suda's jaw worked. "And honor," he asked, not to argue, but to place it. "Honor is bringing your wingman home and arriving when called," Kaito said. "Honor is making the next merge on time. If that means a line of tape across a seam no one will see at speed, then that is what honor looks like today." Nakamura lifted the panel a handspan and let it fall. The bench thumped. The metal shrugged. "This forgives," he said. "Ours asks to be forgiven," Kaito answered. He looked down the row of zeros edges and promise weeping into night, and loved them as he always had the living weight in the stick, the silk of skin in climb, the clean thread of song along control cables. None of that had changed. What changed was expectation. He expected injury, and he expected the answer to be speed, not apology. He pictured the fight as a clock face, wheels on brakes, loose, run up, roll, climb, merge, rearm, repeat. Pulses, not poses. When pulses stood close together, a mistake died alone. When they drifted, one mistake dragged a day behind it. Morning's puzzle solved itself at that thought. Every time he won a moment, a fresh nose arrived to steal it, because the other side owned the schedule that births noses. Suda looked older in the lamp glow. "What changes first?" he asked. In the cockpit, Kaito said, "We stop feeding pride when the picture wants patience. We manage closure like fuel. We take speed away when it buys time, and spend time to make the other pilot early at the wrong instant." He tapped the tray. "On the ground, we stop polishing places that will never matter in a dive. We keep parts where hands can reach. We design brakes to break where we can fix them. We count minutes and tell the truth about the price of each one." A breeze came off the lagoon and leaned the flame. It stood again. Beyond the berms, engines rose and fell with the steadiness of appointments kept. Kaito lifted the panel once more, felt its weight anchor the thought, and set it down with care that was practical instead of reverent. He spoke the sentence the day had earned. Availability and speed beat elegance. The line did not sting. It fit like a bolt seated home. Suda nodded once, as if the motion cost him something he could afford. Nakamura studied the stamped numbers as if new letters were learning to sit beside old ones. A cart squeaked across the same seam it crossed at noon. The field kept its promises. Kaito gathered his helmet and looked toward the runway where the dark was beginning to thicken. He would still carve the circle when the circle brought life, but he would not pretend the fight cared for lines drawn on pride. He had a new line now measured in minutes and returns, and he carried it with him into the night ready for morning. Dawn lifts in thin bands over the lagoon, turning the runway into a pale ribbon where wheels whisper and engines gather themselves. Kaito stands with a pencil stub tucked behind one ear and a small notebook open to a page that has learned to carry numbers without flinching. The old fear used to dress itself as pride lose the circle, and you lose yourself. This morning it arrives plain a moment means nothing unless it breeds another. He can live with that. It gives him something to measure, something to build. He watches a pair taxi past with chalk still on their panels and tape neat over a seam. Yesterday that sight would have bothered him. Today it steadies him. Those marks are receipts for minutes saved. A crew chief shoulders a belt like a coil of rope. Another drags a crate that clacks with fittings. A cart rattles by with a spare blade bolted on like an oar. None of it is elegant. All of it compounds. He writes what the fighting taught him and underlines it until the paper threads count how many clean shots your side can manufacture each minute by managing speed, by thickening the air at the right breath, by feeding your wingman the picture a heartbeat early. That number is the hinge between skill and outcome. He gives it a working name so young pilots can hold it in their heads, while the canopy shakes overshoot windows per minute of frontline demand. It is not a slogan, it is a lever. Raise the count and a small section behaves larger than it is. Let it fall, and even beautiful flying shrinks to a story told after lights out. The way up is simple and hard. Spend speed the way you spend ammunition without romance. Ease power when it turns the other man early. Add power when his eagerness makes him late. Fire in one counts that open doors rather than songs that waste breath. Treat fuel as minutes of life, not gallons in a tank. Treat closure as a tool, not a thrill. If a choice does not add to the minute, it steals from it. Engines turn over in uneven chords that settle into something close to a rhythm. The tremor that used to visit his hand does not come. In its place sits pressure he can lean on as steady as a thumb on a page. He will still carve when the world wants grace. He will not feed a circle when the world is running on sequence. Pride can live in how cleanly he moves, not in refusing the motion that works. He closes the notebook, and the pencil leaves a grey smudge on his finger, another small mark that proves time has been handled rather than admired. He keys the mic for the brief and keeps it spare. Manage your speed. Make the other man early. Count your shots in seconds. If you cannot win this moment, make the next one arrive. Replies come back level, almost casual, as if everyone has decided to carry the same tool in their pocket. A pair lifts, then another. The field sounds less like a ceremony and more like a schedule kept on purpose. He listens to it and hears the shape of the war as numbers you can touch. Perfection can outturn once. Utility creates the next chance. Control closure, and you control the fight.